Okay. Everyone, I wanted to thank you for joining us today for our latest edition of Tech Talk. We, as you've heard before in these meetings, we get asked a lot by our clients on, what's the best way to get the new technology out there and, get it into your hands and let you see it. And that's sort of where the Tech Talk webinar series was born. We're going to do these once a month, maybe a little bit more often. We may start targeting these towards specific vertical markets, as if that lends itself based on the product. But really, this is a response to what you've been asking for. So I really appreciate you joining us. I hope this is productive time for us and for you, and look forward to hearing your feedback about this webinar. This afternoon, we've got the pleasure of hosting Jeff Roberts from SALTO. Pretty much everybody on this call, I'm sure, is familiar with traditional access control, where you've got to run wires to the doors and cut in locks and hang readers and things like that. And I'm sure that probably everybody has experimented or at least seen some wireless readers. But we traditionally think of access control as just being on the door. SALTO can help us out with that. They do have a variety of wireless locks that Jeff is going to tell us about, but they can also take it beyond the door, beyond the traditional method that you know. So if you think about it, instead of running cabling to the door and replacing the entire lock mechanism, what if you could just pop the core out of that door and replace the key core in there and have that start working with a credential that's on your phone? Have you ever considered having an audit trail on a padlock? You may have electrical panels that are padlocked, or you may have a medical gas cage out in the parking lot or in the basement that's locked up with a padlock. But you can't really keep track of that key. So if you've ever thought of perhaps being able to have an audit trail for something like that, that's something that Jeff can tell us a little bit about. So I don't want to give away all the spoilers and all the fun that Jeff's going to tell us about. So at this point, I will turn it over to Jeff. As I said before, we're going to keep this casual. So if you have a question, go ahead and take yourself off of mute. By default in Teams, everybody kind of starts off on mute. So you have to consciously take yourself off. But go ahead, throw the questions out there as they pop up. And without further ado, Jeff, it's all yours.
Thank you, Keith. I appreciate it. Thank you all that are taking the time out of your day to listen. Greatly appreciate the opportunity. As Keith said, I'm Jeff Roberts. I'm the Senior Regional Sales Manager for SALTO in the Southeast, which basically gives me coverage from Texas and Oklahoma across to the Carolinas down to Florida. There's two other people in our company similar to me. We just kind of split it in thirds, and then we have sales folks below that. I've been with SALTO for a little over 9 years now, in the sales, all in the sales role. So that's who I am as a person, kind of what my job is for today's chat. Basic agenda, who is SALTO, kind of who we are, where do we come from, what do we do, where do we see our products deployed, what separates us from, like what Keith mentioned, a traditional wireless lock. Some of us at SALTO can get our feelings hurt if we're referred to as a wireless lock. We'll say, no, we're not a wireless lock, because it comes with certain connotations. So we really try and differentiate that. Understand what the benefits of those differentiators are, which is basically this concept called SALTO Virtual Network, or data on card. We'll dig into that. We will go through some of the basic products. We'll talk a little bit, just kind of try to speak to that value proposition, what those benefits are, and kind of go from there. And at the end, question and answers. But like Keith said, hopefully we can kind of do this throughout. And truthfully, if you have any questions, and my ask is, as we go through this, if you think of some type of operational use case that would relate to you, please, those are always great questions, because that's one of the, I don't want to say a trick, but that's one of the things that we really need to understand is your operational environment, so that we can, help build something that might actually be beneficial instead of just trying to, sell you everything we have, right? That's not really the goal. We want to understand your environment, understand where things fit. SALTO Systems as a company, we started in 2001, so 22 years ago. The company was started in San Sebastian, Spain. The gentleman that started the company, the specific person that invented the technology that we're going to talk about, they came from the electronic lock, hotel lock world. It's where they came from. And if you think about it, if you do have familiarity with wireless locks, a wireless communicating lock didn't exist 22 years ago. You had a hotel type lock or a PIN code type lock, and then you had traditional access control, right? So that's where the origination of our company came from. We do have 40 offices worldwide, over 1,200 employees. We have purchased a number of companies over the years. We now have a total of 8 companies within the SALTO group companies setup. We're going to stick in this presentation mostly to the original product that was developed. So size of scope, how much we've done, just millions and millions of locks. This stuff it's not a point to try and brag or anything like that. It's simply to say, we've been doing this for 22 years. What we do is still fairly unique in the marketplace, and we're successful at it, and we're not small. Like, there's plenty of use case out there, so we're not on the bleeding edge of technology. So we try to stay on the cutting edge without bleeding. We are a privately owned company, and we do put a tremendous amount of pride in the amount of R&D that we invest back into our company and the products and everything that we're developing. We really try and stay on top of that. And if anyone is curious, SALTO it's a Spanish word that means to leap, and that's kind of their thought process, is a leap forward in technology, staying a step ahead, doing that kind of thing. That's really where the name of the company came from. And again, 22 years ago, thinking about what was in the market and what was available, what they really wanted to do was create battery powered locks that would effectively work in any commercial environment, from the sturdiness of the lock itself to the usability to all of the different nuanced access needs that your customers or your employees or your students or your guests might need, right? So to say something as simple as comparing to a hotel lock that is designed for check-in and check-out, but I don't have the ability to give Keith access to my room from 10 to 2 on Wednesday so he can come pick up my bags. I don't have that ability. It's either you have access or you don't. So in the hotel room, that's fine. When you extrapolate that, and in your world, when you extrapolate that into your entire organization, you are going to need something more along the lines of a lock that could handle 4 million different users that all could potentially have a completely unique access plan. That's the type of functionality that we're talking about. When we can do that and you understand that exists, then it becomes a real exciting thing on to imagine what your environment would look like with no mechanical keys, right? There is software that manages it, so this is a system. We'll talk a little bit about it. We have an ability to connect into other access control solutions, or we can stand alone and operate alongside. We can share data, a lot of different things, different ways to make that work. Again, already talked about it, right? In 2001, when we started, SVN stands for SALTO Virtual Network, data on card, and it's this concept. It was using an RFID credential which has a memory chip in it, and it allows you to write information to that chip, right? An RFID card, the purpose of it was for multi-application, right? A bunch of different, it could be your POS system, it could be how you're logging into your copiers, it could be you know, a whole host of things, your traditional access control system, a lot of different things that could be used for. RFID, memory, data on card. So what SALTO is doing, that's how we use these battery powered locks with 4 million users, is each user has his or her own credential. And on that credential is where we load their individual access plan, right? That's really the basic concept of what was done. Then it just becomes a matter of what's the door hardware, where are we trying to put a lock? Keith mentioned different things like cages and cabinets and things like that, and you'll start to see where we go. That's still what the foundation of our product does today, but certainly 2010 wireless locks started to come out. We do have the capability to make our locks communicate wirelessly real time. Now it's just a matter of which doors need it. Some do, some don't, and kind of figure that out. Then in 2015, we launched our own mobile credential that uses either NFC or BLE. It's the same concept. It's data on credential now rather than data on card, but we're basically sending all of the data, all of your access information to your phone. So you could be on your phone in the middle of nowhere at a fence and unlock a padlock with your phone. That's the idea, right? Any questions about that? Just kind of the who we are. Okay. The benefits of it really start to come into this, and this is going to go back to that statement of getting rid of mechanical keys. The idea, if we had a reader on every single door, regardless of what those doors are, starts to bring in a lot of, one, security. We know we can keep all the doors locked because we can easily give people the specific access to what they need and where, which is really difficult to do with a metal key. You also have tracking. So both of those aspects certainly lend to the security. From a flexibility standpoint, understanding it's a battery powered lock that does not need to communicate to the network, right? There's a lot of use cases, tall ceilings, old buildings that you can't wire, buildings that are horrible with Wi-Fi or wireless communication, all points in between, the fence out in the middle of nowhere, right? That flexibility makes it easy to deploy. Efficiency and the usability to me kind of really run similar, but again, it goes back to that. If we have an environment with no mechanical keys, that means everything's a reader. That also means we have a data collection point at every single door or opening in our facility. So even down to a couple of years ago when we had to go through all of the virus scare and everything that entailed, and then came along contact tracing. Well, now we're talking about not just who went in the front door, but we literally have a trail of where that person went in every single door the whole time, and then an ability to pull a report that would show anyone else in those similar doors. So gaining a much clearer picture of where everyone is going. In addition to, and these are true stories, by the way, we have spoken to companies that they're so large, they have so much real estate, they don't actually know completely how their offices or how their office space is being utilized, how often it's being utilized, or if they have one group in one area that's communicating a lot to another group in another area, and they find some inefficiencies to where then they want to move those groups closer together so they're not wasting time walking from one building across campus to another building. So they kind of used that as a term called space utilization. So again, that idea of I get rid of a metal key, but I also put a data point on every single door really becomes an interesting concept that, you know, we can do a whole lot of things with data. So it takes it down a whole other level. Where we actually work, again, anywhere that you can think of that has a lot of doors and a lot of users. So retail, education, healthcare, stadiums, hotels, talked about that. That's easy. Transportation, government, all points in between, any of that. I would like to ask, since we do have a small crowd, would any of you mind sharing what type of facility you are a part of? You don't necessarily need to tell us who you are, but are you in the medical world or just corporate? Anybody?
I'll take a stab at it. This is Eddie. We actually work in mental health facilities here in Jacksonville, Florida, and that's strictly what we do.
Okay, mental health. Okay, thank you, sir.
Mick just threw into the chat that they do food manufacturing.
Ah, okay. Very cool. Okay. I do know we have use cases in both of those.
Keith Kelly just threw in there that they do corporate, and Kim O'Brien says hospitality.
Hospitality. Awesome. Okay. All right. Very complex mix of verticals here. So I think I've kind of hit quite a few, although maybe I didn't hit the food manufacturing, but we could certainly jump into it. But and I appreciate you guys sharing that. It really does create some awareness in how we can start to talk about different scenarios and go through some of these aspects with you, right? And even start to talk about, right, there are places that certain doors in a facility where SALTO isn't the right fit as far as a battery powered lock. And Eddie, I believe it was you that you're in the mental health world. You may have places where you need to be more concerned about almost like a vestibule where you get into one door, but before you get into the next door, the first door has to close. Kind of like, I think they call it a man trap. That's not going to be the right solution for a battery powered lock. That needs to, there's a little more timing involved and things like that. So really thinking about that, but there are certainly going to be other places where we're looking. And really what you could think about it is, if you look at your facility now and think about where all of the metal keys are, that's really where we're going to start to tackle that and be what we believe is a really good complement to your existing access control system. One quick reference, I like to bring it out. The reason I do, so at Princeton University, the reason, it's not because I went there. I didn't even get accepted. I didn't try because I knew I wouldn't. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I didn't even try.
Universities are, they're so complex. They have, I don't know if they have food manufacturing, but they definitely have food storage and all those kinds of things. They absolutely have hospitality. They have corporate normal offices. They have healthcare facilities. It kind of blends into everything, which is why I like to use that. I will tell you, their initial intent was for their dorm rooms, because every summer when everybody moved out, they were having to go and rekey, and that was not very cost effective, labor intensive, wasn't great. They wanted to solve that problem, and they did. They put SALTO locks on the doors, but then once they understood more of what our product was, and it wasn't a hospitality or hotel product, it works in that environment very well. But where we shine is when you understand what we can do everywhere else, everywhere you have a metal key, not just a living environment, right? And that's where it really kind of started to take off and grow from, the 3,000 doors for their dorms to well over 5,000 or 6,000 doors that they have SALTO on. And as an example, they do have an access control system. They do not integrate the two. They have a card that works on both, but their data comes from their employee and student management system that drops into both SALTO and their access control system. So that's just one example They wanted to keep those two separate. They share data. That's a very easy thing for us to do. So sometimes folks will get hung up on it needs to integrate. Other times it's nope, we don't want it to integrate for a couple of different reasons, and that's ultimately how Princeton's rollout is. Here's a number of healthcare references. Again, we are a global company, so a lot of this is, speaking to that effect. And it really comes down to, different countries. The only difference in our product is the door hardware itself. So any of our locks, we have certainly the ANSI standard locks, but we do have European standard locks. There's the Norway and Sweden. I believe they have their own standard, but from a functionality standpoint, it works it works the same regardless of the hardware type of door that we've got. So just a couple of references there. So to kind of get into a little more detail on exactly how it works and kind of trying to conceptualize this is, in 2001, you guys are familiar with your access control, the wired doors, all the different parts and pieces that needs to be done to make that door work so that when somebody presents a badge, the door either unlocks or not, right, and creates an audit. That's the traditional. Then you had the standalone locks like hotel locks, but those points in between was a struggle. You want the cost efficiency of a standalone lock, right? There's a reason hotels don't hardwire every single door. It's not cost effective, but their rooms are their source of revenue, so they obviously need locks on those doors, and metal keys would not be a solution. So SALTO, coming from that hospitality world, wanted to create a battery-powered lock that truly worked in any commercial environment, right? Whether it's the sturdiness of the hardware, can it go outside? How long does it last? How long do the batteries last? All those types of questions. But more importantly, from an operational standpoint, managing the software and doing all those things, the ease of ability to grant someone access, change their access, remove their access, and whether that's a permanent employee, a contractor with limited access, a guest or a customer or a patient, or you can kind of go down the line. And again, knowing that a lock could support 4 million different users, that's actually a function of that's the limit on one database. It's not really a limit of the lock, right? So all different types of users with all different types of access plans. That is what we do on a daily basis, and we feel we're really, really good at that and provide the hardware that can support it. So talked a little bit, you saw the timeline from us, right? 2001, battery powered locks. We invented this SVN technology. That's what's represented down in the bottom left. 2010, we added wireless real-time locks. That's what you see represented on the right. And if you'll notice, the locks all look the same, right? It's not one type of lock for this and one type of lock for that. All of our battery powered locks have the same functionality. It's a matter of how you deploy it. Do I need this lock that's going in this door? I want it to be offline, but a lock that looks just like it that's going onto a door in another area, I need that to be online communicating. It's the same thing throughout. And if you ever change, all the technology is built into the lock. It has the ability to do everything, right? So that makes it a much easier process. And certainly if you're thinking about truly getting rid of keys everywhere, that can become a lot of locks. Now you want to start to understand from a product standpoint, how many different parts and pieces do we have to deal with and all of that. So understanding this is a uniform product throughout is a very beneficial statement. And then you see in the middle, we do have traditional wall readers and controllers. So we can do those typical hardwired points. How it works is slightly different than what you might be used to with a traditional access system where there's a card reader wired to a panel, right? because that's what's happening. You present a card to a traditional system, to a traditional reader, it's going to go to the panel to find out if that card has access. But with SALTO, and I'll show you that here in a second, we don't go and talk back to a panel. Certainly our standalone locks, there's no ability for it to do that because I'm not connected to the network, right? So, and then it all wires back to our software. It is a on-premise server-based software. Again, it'll support 4 million users, and it will support, I didn't mention this, it'll support 65,000 doors. So if anybody on the call needs more than 65,000 doors on one database, all we will do, we'll work with TEKsystems, we'll set up a meeting in Spain, we'll fly out and we'll talk about it, and we'll figure out how we can do that for you. I promise. So any questions? I'm now going to start to get into a little bit of the technology of just kind of actually how it works. But any thoughts, questions so far?
Nope, my next question was going to be, tell us about how the data on the card works.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So I'll jump into that. And again, if there are questions, guys, please feel free to interject. I want this to be as meaningful to you. I do love to hear myself talk, but I can do that all the time. So data on card, RFID, right? There is a memory sector or multiple memory sectors on the card that allows us to load information onto the card. And you can see on the bottom right, that's what we're doing. So every individual user has his or her own individual credential. That's the type of information. All the different doors you have access to, the different zones, different groups. You understand that from a access control process, right? We want to try and, I don't want to have to load every single door on. I want to group them in certain ways and things like that. We do the same thing. But then we also have different functions that we can do. So I could take somebody's office door. You may come in every day. So when you come in the morning, you present your credential and you want the door to just remain unlocked for the rest of the day. We can put that type of functionality onto your card, but say the cleaning staff that comes in at night, when they check in, it doesn't leave the door unlocked, right? So again, very, very granular into the specific access privileges of each individual person, right? Then because we have this ability to write information to the card, all of our readers are actually read-write readers, which means the lock is going to write audit trail of when, where access was granted or denied. We're also going to provide system messages like battery status, deny list information. Certainly you'll have your activation period and your expiration date. So that's all what goes on to the card. And to say this is not there is no such thing as a SALTO card. This is just an RFID, so either MyFair or iClass type credential with enough available memory for us to put all that information on it. That's all we're looking for. Not knowing what any of your cards currently are, what I could tell you is I do know there is a card that would allow you to use the card on our system as well as your existing access control system. I do know that's possible, right? Even if it comes down to having to get a dual technology card, I know there are things we can do along that. So we present this card to a lock. It's a battery powered lock. This particular one has 3 AA batteries in it. It's rated for 50,000 openings. We'll kind of get to that. The lock is going to wake up. It's going to read the card to figure out who you are. Oh, I'm Jeff Wood. The lock is going to read the card to identify if you're authorized into door 101. Yes. The lock is then going to read the card to say, okay, you have authorization to this door, but when? Okay, Monday through Friday from 7 to 5, right? It goes through all of that. It happens instantly, as a very similar user experience to when you go to a hotel and present your credential to a hotel lock. It is that quick. We just do quite a bit more than what a traditional hotel lock would do, but it happens that quick, right? So then The light will turn green in this case because access was granted. Today's Wednesday at 12:33. And then, like I said, that lock then writes an audit to the card saying, hey, I granted you access this date at this time. It's also going to say, hey, by the way, my batteries are running low. So we're going to pass that information as well. Because again, now what we're talking about is how easy would it be for us to actually manage thousands of locks scattered all over our complex, right? Those are the things we're dealing with. We want to grab audit information and battery status. And then also mentioned earlier about the deny list, so canceled cards. We have the ability, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. We have that ability to show if I cancel a card, how that information gets propagated out, right? And it basically happens through the use of all the employees that are using SALTO locks, right? So that's a battery-powered, offline, non-communicating lock. All of that is going to happen. So as I go around my day, I'm picking up, collecting my own audit trail information. When I go by a SALTO wired reader, and we do have the ability to do this with some of our wireless locks as well. This makes it a little kind of cleaner to explain. But let's say an elevator or the main front door or the staff break area, the places where people are always going, I present to that credential. There is a controller, so it can control a door. It doesn't necessarily need to. A quick example of that is in Heathrow Airport. They have update points that don't control doors. They're just scattered throughout the terminals so that their employees can get updates every 4 hours because it's a requirement from the security aspect of their facility, right? So, but in this case, let's assume it's controlling a door. I present to the reader. When I present, the first thing it does, it says, who are you? I'm Jeff Wood. Then it says, where have you been? So before I've even granted access at this store, that reader has collected all the audits that I have on my credential from visiting all of the interior offline locks in my facility. Once I hit one of these readers, all that information loads up into the system and you have your full audit information. It's going to pull battery information. This is also where if you are making changes to somebody's access, say it's some maintenance people that had access to building 1, but tomorrow they need access to building 2. Whoever's managing the system makes that change in the software. They don't have to come visit you or do anything like that. They just simply have to get an update on their credential. It will change their plan, access to different doors, remove access from other doors. And there's a little interesting thing in here that we do, that we have the ability to do. I could actually put a timer on your access that says Jeff Wood has access Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, but only for 24 hours at a time. Or I could shorten that to say 8 hours because he works an 8-hour shift, or even down to 1 hour because he's a contractor and I really want to limit where they can go. That means they have their access, but after that time lapse, the card goes dormant and it won't work on any of the offline locks until they get it refreshed at one of the update points. So it becomes a very dynamic situation. And again, it's a per user feature, so adjustable per user. So you can really, a hotel guest you would not implement that type of function on a hotel guest credential, but you would on the cleaning staff or the maintenance staff, right? So you can really start to differentiate within your organization the different types of users. The other thing that would happen if I canceled somebody's credential, so somebody reported they lost their card, go into the system, cancel their card, certainly issue them a new one, but it's going to create this blacklist or deny list. Every single user that gets an update on their card will pick up information that says James Farrell's old card is no longer valid. Then when they go throughout their day to all the other locks, they're passing that information so that if somebody actually picks up James's old card and tries to use it, it won't work. Not only will it not work, it will wipe all the data off of it so that it won't work in the event somebody finds a door that hadn't been touched by an updated credential. That's where we start to get into a little bit of the weeds on the process. But 20 years ago, this was it. This was that really powerful thing, that game-changing thing that we did that would allow a very efficient use case to efficiently, cost-effectively put more readers throughout a building. Any questions about that?
So Jeff, for the check-in reader per se, basically that would be like a traditional door of access control for the most part, that it would have its own lock and wires going to the door.
Correct. That is the typical place of that.
Okay.
Yes. So certainly,
or it could be just an audit reader somewhere, in a break room. Yeah, you got to pop this when you walk in the break room just to check in.
Correct. Yes. So, and then the idea is we really, again, this is where we go into their operational flow. There are organizations that they're required to take a break every 4 hours. This is a true use case.
Hey, where can I sign up for that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it was like a union thing or something, just whatever that
makes sense.
Organization was. But so guess where the break room was, or where they had to take a break? In the break room. So guess what the break room had an update point. That just ensured. So, and how they ensured it is that 24-hour more access, theirs was limited to 4 hours. So if they didn't go to the break room, they didn't get an update, and they couldn't get in any other doors they were going. So it kind of forced them to follow the rules and do what they were saying. And it gave the organization an audit that proved and showed, well, they took a break. They went here, they checked in. So you start to see how data collection starts to have an effect on facilities. I mentioned it before in a call earlier today, but another very interesting use case was actually at one of the airports in the Midwest. There was an incident where somebody jumped off one of their tug vehicles. They did not turn the vehicle off, which I believe is the requirement of the process and appropriate procedures. They didn't turn it off. They just left it in park. Well, somehow it kicked into drive and ran into a plane. Plane delays, swapping out planes, millions of dollars worth of issue from this one incident. And their question, they came to us and said, hey, could we put something instead of the key on the ignition so that when somebody badged in, they had to badge the machine to turn it on? So now we're not even talking about doors. It's a data collection point on an ignition switch that was also tied to their, equipment certification for that vehicle, right? You have to get certified every year and make sure you're up to date and all that. And very easy for us to do. Interestingly enough, right up until the union said they didn't like that. They didn't want that level of tracking and visibility with their employees. Yeah. So, but the capabilities are there, and it's a very interesting use case on that happening.
Hey, so, Jeff.
Yep.
So I know we talked about this in that earlier call. So if somebody's using a mobile, and I'm probably getting ahead of you, but
no worries.
They wouldn't have to have that check-in reader, correct?
100% correct. Yes.
So like our friend Eddie down in Jacksonville, he's got a number of facilities, and and they could go to those other facilities and not have to put them online, and not have to have any kind of connection back to another location potentially. So if he's got a single location with 1 or 2 doors, and it's too costly to put in a iStar panel.
Yep.
He could do something like this and then still link it to his iStar system, or to his Secure system.
Correct. Yes. 100%. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. That's when we get into the mobile credential, that's really where it really starts to accelerate. Certainly here when we added the real-time wireless. Now it does require us to deploy some wireless infrastructure. Still a lower cost than like a full access control door, and you are now limited to where you can deploy network, which is a consideration. But any of our wireless real-time locks, I can do a remote open. I can do an emergency lockdown. I could hit a button that causes a situation to lock down all the interior doors in building A, right? As nuanced as we need to do, because it is real time. Our locks communicate every 4 seconds back to the system, and it's just a heartbeat. So door propped open type things. If a door is propped open, it's left open, we'll know it within 4 seconds, and we're sending an email to maintenance or to security or whoever to go check out that door, right? So this is all the effects of real time. Certainly it's going to send audit trail, it's going to send battery life. We can do door monitoring, as I mentioned, all of those things. So this just adds more functionality. The important thing to remember is even if the network goes down for whatever reason, it doesn't affect their access, because their access is determined by the information on their card. Always a very, very quick thing. And then lastly, with the real-time wireless lock, if you do cancel one of those keys, where we talked about that viral spread of information passing the deny list, any of our online wireless locks will have that updated deny list within 4 seconds, right? So that's just very quick on the additional functions if we add the wireless. Then Tim, to your point, just in mobile. Now it's a game changer, because now our credential is a connected device. I'm using it the same way. I'm still storing all of my access information on my phone, right? But now when I present my credential to, in Keith, your example of an employee at an offsite building, right? They may not even know they're going from one building to another, didn't know they need access, simply make a phone call, hey, give me access, put it into the system. It updates their phone with a simple refresh of the app. When they show up at that building, they present their credential to the door, and they get the audit immediately as well. So even though that's an offline door, not connected to any network infrastructure, I've now got an immediate audit from that. The mobile app also, some really good use cases also comes into with guests, whether it's in some type of shared living space or corporate office. Any of the guests, it's typically easier to issue them a mobile credential than having to issue a physical credential. So we see a lot of that as well. And again, right, you just think about all the different places where you have a metal key. Somebody's got to be able to get in, but it's not near anything else. If you have your phone, if you can make a phone call, your company can update your access and get you into that door, right? With no network infrastructure. So now we'll talk a little bit about hardware. We have on the left, that's a full-size lock, fully outdoor rated. It can go with a mortise lock set, cylindrical lock set, or exit trim. That is the workhorse. That thing can go everywhere. Talking about it here, there's a lot of different finishes and handle sets. We're showing it with BioCoat, which is that antimicrobial that really aids in the reduction and spread of germs and all that. We see that mostly in the both the education space and the medical space is where we see a lot of that, but probably not a bad thing to think about in the food manufacturing as well, right? In the middle, that's the XS4 Mini. It is designed, it's interior only. It is designed to go a direct replacement to the interior office doors. It's the same prep. It takes about 5 minutes to install that, not having to drill any holes in doors or anything like that. Super quick, efficient replacement. And then we have locker locks. So thinking about any type of, certainly in the hospitality world or fitness world, or in spas, things like that, where people are coming in and need a locker to change clothes, whatever the case may be. A hospital that has nurses and doctors and different employees coming in at different times, constantly in need, don't have a desk, but they need a place for their equipment or their personal belongings, that locker lock. And again, everything that we've talked about exists with all of these types of locks, different types of door hardware. Then we get into our key cylinders. This was mentioned at the very beginning, that idea of just replacing that key cylinder, right? You have a deadbolt, pull that key cylinder out, you can pop this in right away, and you're off and running. You now have a data collection point, you have timed entry, and you have tracking, right? These Neo cylinders I can do with mortise key cylinders. I can do them with cam locks. I can do them with rim key cylinders. I can do them with deadbolts. Obviously, we can do swing handles on server racks. There's a lot of different things we can do. And that's all it is. It's just purely replacing the key cylinder, right? You may have access control on one exterior door, but you don't need a reader at every single exterior door. You just want to get rid of the keys. That's an excellent spot. You know, a bank of doors all next to each other. I have one reader for the door on the left. I just want to get rid of the keys on all the other 4 doors to the right. Then we have a padlock. We actually have 2 different ones. We have a grade 4 padlock. Anyone into padlocks, a grade 4 padlock is just, it feels like it weighs 15 pounds and it's super heavy and sturdy, and it would take a serious intentional act to get beyond it. As serious as we've legitimately had a sheriff's office shoot it 6 times with a breech shotgun to see if they could bypass it, and they couldn't. So it's a bit of it can seem like overkill, but there are applications that absolutely need it. And then we have a smaller version, both of them fully outdoor rated, and we've tested them in very cold environments in Canada down to very hot environments in Arizona and all points in between, right? So again, you're starting to just really see that what we're talking about as far as getting rid of keys, trying to create that environment, a facility of completely keyless, make our lives easier, give us the tracking, give us the visibility, give us the data that we need to better operate our facilities, right? You know, and again, those differentiators, I'll breeze through them. We did talk about them, right? Comparing to a wireless lock, we don't need wireless infrastructure. We don't need additional controllers. We don't need additional panels to deploy this. If the wireless goes out, we still have access. So your notification of those types of things becomes much less. Future-proof on the technology stack of the locks. There's functions, capabilities in our locks that our software has not even released yet. To give an example, being able to use the Apple Wallet, putting a mobile credential into the Apple Wallet. The functionality is already built into the lock itself. The software just hasn't been approved and set up yet. But once it's there, we're ready to go. And that's true of all of our locks being purchased from last September, actually, where this full change was. So it has a BLE chip inside of it. That BLE chip is used for traditional mobile credentials, as well as used for communicating wirelessly if we install the network, to the point of also using that potentially to communicate to, say, a Ruckus wireless access point, right? Then, of course, the advantage of that hybrid system, some doors offline, some doors online, some doors wireless, some doors hardwired, just that real true customization of your facility. We haven't talked about it too much. We do have the ability to integrate with a number of different access control platforms. To say a few of them that I know offhand: Software House, Linnell, Honeywell ProWatch, and Genetec, to give some very quick examples. But I also mentioned another process and it was Princeton, and they have one of those systems that I just mentioned, but they've chosen not to integrate it. They just work side by side, and it's very easy for them to do that. And they have 2 different teams that manage those systems. The team that used to manage all the keys now manage the SALTO system. The security department still manages the access control system. But then again, what it brings to, and maybe that was Tim that mentioned it, where now we can deploy a lock offline on a building in some other area because, you know, you have 2 remote employees out there, but you can connect that back to your existing software house system, right? So very quickly, easily pop that lock on that door without having to deploy all the minimum, you know, where it takes just that minimum set of equipment to turn on one door. With SALTO, it's just so much easier. It's literally just, what is that door? What's the lock that you need? Order the lock, install it, and you're up and running. It's that quick. some of the value proposition to it, right? Average access control doors in a normal project, 50 to 75 doors. For us, if we're really talking about getting rid of keys, we're talking about the other 90% of the openings in your facility. Again, you start to really think about what the advantages are of that amount of data collection points and just giving you that much more visibility to your facility, right? Much more cost effective. There are reasons for fully wired doors, 100%. But there are places where we could improve your facility at a much lower cost per door, right? So very cost effective, very compatible with most existing door hardware. So we're not having to change a whole bunch of stuff, not having to electrify stuff. And then the different finishes, the different handle sets, so we can meet the aesthetics. We can, do the biocoat if there's issues with those types of things. So that's really where that comes into. That's kind of the end of the presentation. I went a little bit longer than I wanted to, and I apologize for that. I was just getting excited, I think. Any questions from anybody out there? Did I say anything that may have sparked some interest or made you question how something might fit in your facility?
Anyone, did we get some wheels turning? Maybe think about securing some doors that you hadn't really thought about securing before because they're out of the way, or just the expense wasn't justified for what it's locking, or anything.
So with the cylinders, you was talking about replacing the cylinders. We could keep our regular hardware and just change the cylinders and have the system.
That is the idea. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, because one of the reasons why that would be a huge one for us is we have these very expensive anti-ligature setups on our behavioral health units.
Yes.
And that would be, it really would be ideal for us if we were able to stick with that anti-ligature, lock the face, and just have the cylinders changed. So that's something that we're definitely interested in knowing more about.
Yep. We did do a mental health facility in North Texas. Now this was a new build, but there was a particular lock, and I didn't really show it, but there was a particular lock that we used that did allow them to work with their ligature resistant handles, right? Now that was a new one for me. That was very new. I've not been in that world, but yes, we've certainly done those types of things before.
Right.
Yep. Kim, what type of hospitality environment are you coming from? Nothing.
No, Kim, you still there? You're on mute if you're talking.
No worries. We do have, I'll say this, we have a ton of hospitality references. That's kind of a whole new world. I'm actually at a hospitality conference at the moment, so leaving today. But anyway, gentlemen, anything else? Any other questions?
I think I'm good, Jeff. It was I really enjoyed the presentation. Definitely got some wheels turning for me.
Sure. Well,
Thanks, Jeff.
Again, appreciate the opportunity. Always happy to do we do like to do this. We like to do physical demonstration of product. Sometimes seeing it real time can really become, bringing in some of that hardware, putting your hands on it, things like that can become very effective. So, Keith and Tim, anything that we can do to support you in that effort, we have folks all over the country. So let us know how that might help.
Definitely, we will. So,
okay.
Any other questions? Well, hey, look, everyone, I really appreciate your time today, and I appreciate the interaction as well. It was kind of nice to have a smaller group and sort of get some live feedback here. So, Eddie, I'll definitely be in touch with you to, see if we can follow up with the key cylinders for you. We'll definitely make sure to follow up with you on that. Again, if you see anything out in the industry that you're kind of curious about, you'd like to know a little bit more about, this is what we want to provide for you. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm the guy that's sending you the emails every month with the invitations. I'll be happy to either set up a one-on-one, or if it's something that we think it'd benefit the whole group, we'll put out another public monthly webinar with it. But we definitely welcome your ideas. We thank you for your time, and I hope this was a good use of your afternoon.
Thank you very much. We're actually having our access control system installed as we speak, so I'll definitely be looking forward to hearing from you.
Outstanding. We'll be in touch.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you again, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.